So I would like you guys to make sure you title your page Lesson Prep CMAS 1.4 and then write strategies when solving math problems when you are not sure. So we're always going to start off by reading the problem. And then we're going to have two reactions. One reaction is, I got this. The other reaction is, I'm not sure. So these are for when you are not sure. Because I can tell you that the one thing that I have been impressed with this class as well as the other classes, is that when prompted to do a few things, you do know how to do most of the problems. I've been like, wow, like you do. We lack confidence sometimes in how to get to the point where I can gain my confidence to then tackle the problem. So these strategies that we're going to go over today, like I said, we will practice these strategies next week when we're doing our Kahoots with some kind of sample problems, as well as the Jeopardy. So we will practice these strategies. Because I can tell you that one thing I do know is that the CMAS questions, they're challenging. And they make you think. But you guys have ample time to practice all these strategies on the test day. First one, read slowly. Okay? So we want to read slowly. I'm just going to make my non-linguistic representation. So you need to make your non-linguistic representation of what that is. So mine's like a little guy with a book. Just read slowly. Reread it. That's definitely the first step. Second step. What are they asking me to answer, and define each individual word in the question? So most of the words you're not going to have to define. But what are they asking me to answer? Think about that first. Like, okay, what? Because sometimes they're going to put a lot of other stuff in there. There's going to be a lot of other stuff. So just ask yourself, what do I need to answer? Sometimes I would, and I'm going to draw that as one of my non-linguistic reps, underline. Underline what it is they're actually asking you to answer. And then define the words that really, really matter. Okay, and that kind of brings us to this one. But so what would I write down for defining?
A bold, like
like we. Close life. Come on. Highlighter. Yeah. So if the word was, and I'm going to use this word from yesterday. Proportionality. Proportionality was a word that we saw yesterday. Constant proportionality was the whole word. So if I wasn't sure about proportionality, I could first, I want to highlight it, underline it, do something to it. And then I want to try to think about, like, maybe I know what proportion is. Maybe I know this piece, but I'm not sure about the other piece. If I know what a proportion is, I'm like, oh, that's like it's like a piece of something. It's similar to. Okay? That might help you get started. Just that little thinking break where you go back and define that word. You try to, like, okay, proportion. Oh, proportion is like a piece of something. It's like similar to. Okay, I got that. Oh, I know what the word constant is. Constant is something that's steady. Oh, and that might trigger, that's a rate in an equation. These all might help you figure out what that word means. So underline keywords and ideas. So it's kind of like where I underline what they're asking me. That's a big idea. Okay? And then define what those keywords and ideas are. So if they're asking me, does the graph show a constant of proportionality? Well, I know what a graph is, so I'm good there. They're asking me to show them, does it show? So I know I need to use the graphs. And then what is that word constant? What's that word proportionality? This next one, to me, is probably, outside of just rereading it, is the most important. So I'm just going to star this, because I feel like we don't do this enough. And this is partly my fault, because I didn't start the year teaching you this strategy. And I tried to switch gears back in February around this when I kept hearing, well, I don't get it. I'm confused. The thing is, you know a lot. When I started asking you questions, you guys could tell me a ton. Write down what you know about the problem. So, what do I know? I'm going to draw a picture of myself thinking with a question mark and a little thought bubble. So, what do I know? If it's a question and it's asking, what percent of the kids ride the bus to school? Ask yourself, do I know what a percent is? And you could write these down. Like, yeah, I know 100% means everyone. If I was to change that, when I use a percent, I multiply. These are all things that you can write down. And a lot of write about what you know about the problem is going to go back to those key words. What do I know? What's a constant? Oh, that's a rate. It's a rate in an equation. Write those things down. And literally, if it doesn't have a lot to do with it, still write it down. What that does, it does a couple things. It gives you confidence. Because you do know a lot about almost every single math problem you tackle. Like, oh, you see those big problems with fractions? Be like, and fractions get you nervous? Like, okay, I got a fraction here. What do I know about a fraction? Well, I know that it's made out of a numerator and a denominator. I know that when I multiply a fraction, and I would write these down, I go straight across. I multiply. I know you guys know all of this. So you get a big equation. It's got this crazy. I know, when I divide by a fraction, I have to do copy dot flip flop. Okay, so I'm going to copy dot flip flop. These are things that, like, when you write them down, you're like, man, I do know a lot. And I am smart. And I got a challenging problem that I got to solve. I know multiplication. I know that I have to do what's in the parentheses first. These are all things that allow you to say, yeah, I'm a good math student and I can do this. So I would say that's probably the most resourceful strategy because you do know a lot. Write down a simple version of the problem. This is one that I'm going to use towards the end. Like, I bookmarked this problem. Okay, I haven't spent a lot of time on it. I bookmarked it. I come back to it. Now, I can write down a simpler version. Substitute easy numbers for the numbers they give you if the calculation part is difficult. So, let's say it was using a fraction, and it was asking me to do distributive property with a minus sign. Okay, and it's asking me, hey, what does x equal in this equation? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really hard. This is a challenging question. Yes. So maybe I can take out that fraction. Honestly, it will help. And I just write it like this. I'm like, I'm going to take out that fraction for now, and I'm just going to do it this way. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I know what to do. I got to add 6 to both sides. All of a sudden, like, without the fraction, you're like, I got this piece. And then go ahead, put the fraction in, and then see, okay, now that I know what I need to do here, how do I tackle that over there? And you might not come to an answer. You might not figure it out, and that's okay. But you know, like, man, I know a lot about this problem. I know I have to add 6 to both sides. And when I do that, I'm going to get x equals 24. Okay? But here I know I got to do this distributive property thing first. And that could be a challenge. So then you're going to say, what do I know about fractions? Well, numerator, denominator, they multiply straight across. Copy dot flip flop. I know here I got to get x all by itself. So you can sometimes make a simpler version to build some confidence. Sometimes you can substitute in. Sometimes I might say, I'm going to get rid of that 2/3 because that's kind of throwing me off right now. I'm going to put a 4 here. And then you're like, okay, 4 times x is 4x. 4 times that is 24. And all of a sudden now I'm building some confidence again. Okay, I got this. Now I just got to figure out how to do it with a fraction. A strategy that you use at the end, not at the beginning, because it takes time. And time is something that you want. Yeah?
You could change it into a decimal.
I could change it into a decimal. Yeah. That's another thing I know about a fraction. I can take it, put it into a decimal. And if they're giving me a calculator, sweet. Because I can do that math pretty easy. If they're not giving me a calculator, more challenging. But again, something that I know. Take a fraction, turn it into a decimal. And then the last one, cross out answers that do not fit. And I'm just going to, my would be an X. Or I might even use that view, the viewer, which allows me to not look at all the answers. Or I might use the, what is it called? Answer eliminator? That's like the coolest. Answer eliminator. Coming soon to a theater near you. A test near you. April, you'd be in line to see that movie. You'd be like, wait, you camp overnight. It'd be a pretty short movie too, I would have to say. He used the answer eliminator.
Bookmark it. That's not on there.
Thank you. And you know what? And I should have put that one on there, so I'm going to add it. Thank you. Because for what they give you, I feel like that's a huge strategy. Because I read it, I'm not sure, I reread it, I ask myself, what do I know? And then I kind of work it a little bit. Maybe I eliminate some questions or whatever. But at some point, I'm like, you know what? Bookmark. I'll come back to it. And you know what? You might have 5 questions bookmarked, 6 questions. Don't freak out. It's not. Do the ones that you're confident on. When you read them, you're like, I think I might get this. Read it again. Be like, yeah, I got this. Do it. Read it. Not sure. Read it again. Still not sure. I read it slowly. I tried to define some terms. Okay, I get a little, I make some progress. I start thinking about what do I know. Bookmark it. Come back to it. Go to the, finish it. Go to the end. Remember, they're not, the calculator portions are smaller than the non-calculator. So I want to give you as much information to make you guys as comfortable as possible so you guys can just crush it. Because you guys do know, I've been so impressed with your math skills.
Wait, you can go back and forth between problems?
Yes, you can. Exiana,
How long do we have to do the test?
75 minutes.
Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, but I'm almost certain that the calculator portions are like less than 10 questions. But now, they are kind of intimidating, and I'm going to give you some to make sure that you guys are prepared to oh yeah, I've done this, I've seen them, I can do this. The non-calculator portion is like 16 to 18 or something like that. So there's a little bit more of those. But the calculator portions, not as many questions, but the work is a little more heavy. Okay. Yeah.
Wait, so if you can use a calculator on one, could you do your problem with the calculator and go back?
It's literally whole entire section, no calculator.
Oh, so there's two different tests?
3. So the portion I just gave you,
Yeah.
that was the no calculator. That's why I said you can't use a calculator here. The CMS prep I gave you was a non-calculator.
So the
Yeah.
CMS ones are just like 16 and 15 kind of thing? Or
Uh-huh.
match the ones that are like 50?
Totally different kind of test, right? Because we talked about maths. Maths is like, there's one answer. And then once you answer and you submit, you could be like, right out, be like, oh, I know, because the next question made you think of something, you can't go back. CMAS, you can literally answer and be like, you know what, at the end of this, I want to go back and check that one.
Like in part, it glitched out.
Okay?
You didn't get to answer 5 questions. It just went.
Yeah, but they have fixed so many. There has not been one issue in 8th grade, not one. So a kid got logged out. They go back on, boom, it starts right where you left off. Yeah, they fixed all those little glitches that they've had in years past.
So next week when we have all these tests, it's going to be CMAS, or is it going to be?
CMAS, yeah. It's all CMAS now.
Are we having, next week?
Not for a while. So something you guys need to know, and I'm gonna reiterate this so it's on YouTube. We know some things about CMAS. One is when they says select all, there's going to be multiple answers in there, and they are kind of degrees of difficulty. Like you might get one, you're like, I got that one. Like we're going to go over something today, and you're like, oh, I got that. But then there's going to be some harder ones in there. So you need to do some more work. You get credit for what you know. That's important to know. That if you're given a box to write things in, write what you know in the box. Because someone who's grading that's going to be looking at it, and they're going to be like, they knew the rate. They didn't know how to use the rate, but they knew what the rate was. Oh, that's 2 points. It's a lot like when you guys do the written tests for me. I'll write down 5 out of 8. You knew a lot about the problem. Didn't get the right answer. That's not a big deal, but you knew a lot. That's what you need to show. Okay? Yeah? You're going to get more than minutes.